Just to recap, on the first day we started, everything starts with an idea. So whether that idea is coming from yourself or it's coming from an external source or wherever it's coming from, it will grow, it will express itself because as we found out, idea and growth are the exact same word vibration. And yeah, we live under the creative natural laws. So that's what we're kind of delving into here. And today we are on day 2 and we are talking about perceiving is the next step of the hero's journey of the creative process. So I can jump in really. I thought this was interesting. When I looked up the definition of perceive, it says to become aware of, know, or identified by means of the senses. And I thought that was really interesting because the little story I put up earlier of the bean growing, you know, it's planted into the soil. And then I actually started thinking like, okay, so now it's in this new, and I guess environment might be the word, but, and it's actually sensing the things around it. And it's kind of this, no, it's just growing, but, you know, it might not be conscious that it's going to be, you know, a bean or whatever it's going to turn into, but it's growing regardless. So I'll let you expand on that.
Well, you know, I think that's so a great way of starting it, because how many times do you get an idea and you don't take the time to fully perceive it, like to really just be with it and just see what things sort of come to you, because perceive and light have the same word vibration. So, you know, there are people who are saying that light is information. You know, that's word vibration wise, it's not exactly true, but in a way it's the, you know, light is the ability to perceive. You know, that helped me so much, because one of the things when I started, before I even started this database, it perplexed me about prayer, you know, because there were some people that they would pray and you would feel like the skies were opening up. You knew that person's prayer would not be denied just because of that person.
Yes.
And then there are other people, they say, well, I'm going to pray to God. And you look at them and you go, good luck with that. You know, like the story of the guy who was flooding and they're like, send me he's waiting for God to help him. And then all these boats came by and he didn't get it because he was waiting for God. But it's just not even being able to perceive.
Yes.
You know, when I fully understood that, people that I knew who, when they would pray and it would, you know, they would get what they prayed for, they had a clear image. They had a sense of what it was that they wanted.
That's such having a sense of something too, and just going back to that definition.
And it's interesting too with, you know, when we're at this place in our journey, it's a combination because, you know, remember we split at the number 1. Every growth, you know, you have the male and the female, the positive and the negative, the contrast, right? So all of this is here. You know, it was fascinating to me when I realized on the word vibrations that beauty and contrast had the same vibration. I'm going, oh my gosh, because that's the so hard part about life. You know, when you're like, why do I have to go through this crap to get to where I want to go? You know, but at the same time, contrast actually helps with perception.
Yes. And I think it's interesting too that, you know, before we started working together, I really never even thought of the word perceive. It just really wasn't in my vernacular. It wasn't like a big deal to me. And really sitting with it, it's almost like a paradox, because you can't think about perceiving. It's something you really, you can't figure it out. It's not, you know.
Wow. That is so on target.
And I think so much of like religion and spirituality and, you know, no matter what path you're on, there's the mystery, you know, the mystery. And I almost think of that, you know, being in the 2, the idea of being in the perceiving, it's almost like the caterpillar being in the goo before it becomes the butterfly. Like what happens in there? What is going on in that cocoon?
Right. And that caterpillar is not thinking, you know, because it's so interesting that you said that, because perceive and thinking have the same word vibration. As well as doubting. So when we're not perceiving, we're doubting and we're thinking and we're wondering, why isn't this happening? What's the problem? You know, the mind is just going and going and going and going. Whereas if you just step back a little bit and went, now what is my idea? What's the point here? You know, why am I even here? What am I trying to do? You know, and I love the way you talk about what happens with the egg. Because, you know, I just go, God does not play dice with the universe. I just always just blows me away. You know, like when I was trading, you know, the Fibonacci sequence, that's when I first ran into the Fibonacci sequence, and that just that pattern of the spiral growth that you can see in the market, you know, and the crowd follow this growth. I mean, the pegging of the, you know, charting, technical charting with the Fibonacci sequence and watching the price go to a certain place and stop. That has always blew me away. It's just like, how is this even possible? You know?
Yeah.
And so going with this, like one, you know, that's the way I'm with these word vibrations. To me, it's just always amazing, you know, because I don't know, one day I was thinking about something and I was wondering what egg was, you know, and here I have over 7,000 words and I didn't even have egg in there. So I was like, oh, let me see what egg is. And I looked and it was a 1. And I was like, no. And then I was like, okay, the egg is a 1. What's fertilized?
A 2.
Yes.
Yeah.
Excuse me, scream. That's how I get with this. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it's a 2. And then when you shared that story about when you were looking up the conception and how they knew what they're discovering, share that, please.
Yeah. So people can look this up. It's called the flash of zinc. So what really happens, you know, we've always been under this understanding that like the sperm comes and it forces its way into the egg and it impregnates it or whatever. And really, you know, that egg is sitting there. And like if a different species sperm came by, it wouldn't react to that because it doesn't have, it's not recognizing the correct blueprint or genetic, you know, material. But when the right sperm does come through, the egg actually lets out this flash of zinc. And the zinc actually pulls the sperm in and it dissolves. And that's when that genetic material starts, you know, being in the goo, perceiving itself or whatever's going on in there. So, and you know, isn't it funny that how this is in our like plain sight all the time, the creative cycle. I mean, we naturally, there are, you know, walk outside, there's probably a pregnant lady around you somewhere. And this is always happening, but it's so out of touch for us a little bit.
Yeah. And also an important thing about that is the law of attraction. From it's backwards. And what we're realizing as we're waking up out of this matrix is that things are backwards. So it's not like the egg just waiting to attract the sperm. She's like picking. She's got a clear perception. I need a human sperm or whatever. I need a turtle sperm. Whatever that is, you know, there's that clear perception. And then when it's right, choosing. And choosing's also a 2. So along with perceiving, we're choosing.
Yeah. Well, and it was interesting because that story I put up, I'm just using like Tool, that band Tool. They're so smart, the whole band. But, you know, they even say second guessing, you know, and how so many of us are taught to really like question and not trust ourselves. And I mean, myself included, I've second guessed my way through my whole life. And to really come to this place of, all right, I'm going to sit with this idea. I'm going to trust my gut. And I you know, I was going to tell you that too. I looked up visceral and it says characterized by or dealing with, characterized by or proceeding from instinct rather than intellect. And it also said dealing, I don't have it on here, but it was saying oh no, I'm so sorry.
Oh, you see, now you're going to get me wanting to look up the word vibration by doing that.
Yeah. I think, but viscera, you know, it's really, it's the organs of your abdomen cavity. So it's your gut. And I always think of that quote that's, it takes guts to make your mind the servant of your heart. And it's like, and people always say, trust that gut feeling. And it keeps coming back to this perceiving place for me. Yeah.
Well, you know, one of the things that when I discovered numerology that so surprised me was I had the challenge of a 2. So in numerology, that's a challenge of sensitivity. And people who are sensitive from a bodily standpoint, what happens is that when you walk in a room and somebody's angry and you actually sense it in your body. And so then you think it has something to do with you.
Yes.
So then you're looking at, well, how did you make somebody angry? Or you become so self-conscious and, you know, and so that's the whole that happens so much with people, people who say they're empaths. And especially now, I share with people, it's like, this is not a time to be sensing, because there's just so much being broadcast out as the earth is on its hero's journey, and we have so much contrast, and, who knows what's being actually put in the airwaves, because, the stuff,
environment.
Right. And because, all of this stuff is ancient. You go back to ancient Egyptians, you go back to Freemasons, people understand how energy work. And unfortunately, it's been used to keep people oppressed, because you can't have power unless you press someone,
Right.
I mean,
go ahead.
No, you go.
It's interesting that you say that too, with when I was a kid, I was a sensitive kid. And I remember that being it was bad. It was a negative thing to be a sensitive, and I always was embarrassed by it, I think, a little bit. And now, and just like you're saying, you can walk in a room and sense that someone's angry. And how difficult is it for a lot of us to just let them be angry. To not take that on, to not try to fix it, to not try to. So even when you have an idea that you might be like, this is very uncomfortable. I didn't know I was going to think about this. Just sit with that discomfort and just let it be. It takes some training. It has for me. So
And there's a good example of taking on an emotion as an idea.
Okay.
You go in a room and you feel somebody's angry, you think that has something to do with you, so then your attention goes on this anger, and then you start thinking thoughts of anger, then you might get feel angry and still feel like you have to protect yourself, and you're off taking just that idea of something you perceive, you're running it through the creative process, and God knows what your experience is going to be. I mean, I've had something like that where you go, whoa, how did I wind up here?
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too that when I think of sensitive people, you automatically think of people that have this very caring nature to them in a way. And I mean, really, the past year and a half has been a big trial and error, a very testing grounds for me to really let people be. And I think there's a lot of influence around us that is encouraging us to always, take care of everyone else. But when I think of taking care of someone else, it's just giving them space and letting them be there, not trying to fix their problems and not trying to, give them my prescription or whatever.
Right. And let's bring that back to perceive, because another word that has the same vibration as perceive, not exactly the same, but the word will. And a will, that gets misunderstood, because will, we think, is supposed to be force. I have to force myself to do something.
Yeah.
No, will is allowing yourself to perceive. Hold the space for your idea. That's not what we're taught to do, to hold the space for our idea. Because then as you hold the space, it's almost like, putting a seed in the ground, right? And the number 2 is germinate, has the same vibration. So that it has to be in the ground and it has to germinate. You can't keep digging it up. Well, did it grow yet? Is the seed growing? You have to allow it to sit there, and singularity is there. That is, and energy, like chi and energy, all those things are like a number 2. So you're just letting it sit in there, and just allowing. The perception is the will. That's what I was talking about. The will is really holding space for an idea. As you use your attention to hold the space for the idea and allow that idea to be germinated, to be energized.
Yes.
And you're allowing that union of the male and the female, the attention and the energy to become a union again, because they're going to get ready to be born in the 3. You see? So.
Well, and I think that's interesting too. I always think of, just from having the Irish Catholic background and our Father, thy will be done. And we were talking earlier in our coaching session about personifying God and sort of needing that. But I think it was useful for me in my own path to have that bridge where, thy will be done. It was like, okay, I have this idea and I know there's this thing that wants to come out. And even personifying it in a way I don't think is bad when you're on your path. There's so many different steps to it, but it was helpful for me.
No, but there's so many valuable things in the Bible. Just like when you're saying thy will be done, that's holding space for
Yes.
the idea.
Mm-hmm.
Rather
And
than,
knowing that it can be uncomfortable, you know, but you
right,
need to just let it develop.
right, right. Because when we get over polarized, because duality is also too. So when we get polarized and you know, when we are locked in the polarities, you know, we're either over here doubting, you know, and or we're swung over here because we can't allow the just the energy of the idea to happen, you know, and or we get so energized and we're so excited, we throw so much energy in it, and we go over to the opposite side, and then we start claiming it. This is my idea. This is what I'm going to do. This is my identity. Yeah. And then at that point, that's the forcing of the will. Mm-hmm. You know, how many times, I know I've done that, where you try to force something, and then the idea just totally is not what you expected or what it could have been because of claiming it and putting, you know, our mental mind into it as opposed to, you know, allowing like a seed to grow. Imagine if we did that to a seed.
Yeah. I know. Well, and it goes, you know, I think you're speaking to like patience too. And, mm-hmm. and I think, you know, I've heard a lot of people when they're speaking about trauma, they'll say it's mm-hmm. just too painful. I can't go there. I can't sit with it. I can't. And I've certainly done that with my mm-hmm. own traumas. Mm-hmm. And it's just so interesting that we've been turned off from this. Like, it's so natural. It's always happening. Mm-hmm. And we have these blocks, you know?
Right, right, right. And trauma is also has a 2 vibration. So you can see right there, I mean, the amount of energy, this person is feeling all this raw energy, but yet because of the trauma, they can't perceive. Mm-hmm. Or we can. And I've been there, you know. I mean, we've all been
well, and even just going back to that whole "thy will be done," it was very comforting for me to know this is in my highest good, mm-hmm. and just because this is uncomfortable doesn't mean I need to do it today. Doesn't mm-hmm. mean I need to do mm-hmm. it tomorrow. Mm-hmm. I can just let these things sit, and that's oh my God, that's been so helpful mm-hmm. in my journey. Mm-hmm. Even recently, there's been things I know I had to mm-hmm. grow from, and you know, I didn't know where they were going to go after I grew right. from them, but I really have just been surrendering and trusting mm-hmm, to this.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's also interesting too on flow. We were talking about that earlier. You know, flow being a word vibration is same as perceive, and how when you think about flow, we're thinking, oh, the river, like we have to be like the river flowing, you know, and authentic is there too. Oh, we have to be like the river. You know, when you perceive something, flow naturally occurs. We're always on the opposite end of thinking we have to make something happen, where it's always about allow. You know, it's release, embrace, you know, it's that constant back and forth movement of release and embrace for that balance, release, embrace. Well, and you just march along, you know?
Well, even in our coaching session today, we were talking about the conductor and how cool it is.
Yes.
You know, that the conductor with this orchestra is just, you know, they're communicating without words. There's mm-hmm. this whole conversation happening, this whole thing happening. And it's just, I mean, the way their bodies move, and it's just so beautiful to watch.
And it's a sequence. They're experiencing a symphony of frequencies. And you know, in the whole voice aspect, because I'm getting ready to get some software to analyze voices and see what frequencies somebody's missing or not. I'm so excited. But one of the tidbits I heard was that conductors live a long life.
Yeah.
Because they're always so rich in all the frequencies as they're conducting this orchestra. Isn't that cool? I mean, you know, and you can actually even feel that, you know. And then also, too, they get to experience the duality and the polarity, because a horn comes in over here, you know, and so they get that, too. And then they bring everybody back together, and everybody's playing in unison again, and it's so beautiful. And that's what we're supposed to be experiencing with life.
Yeah. And I even think, too, you know, in that perceiving, you know, whether the conductor's perceiving or like there's all this perceiving going on in this orchestra, and there's still this like common end goal, and it isn't mm-hmm. to make this song a certain thing, but it's to flow together and to be in this space together and you know, at our best. And
it's the experience of the music, and that's what we forget, because we have an idea that gets split into the experience and the experience. And the whole point is for the experience.
Yes.
And that's where people have the most problems. You know, one of the sound therapies that I've done is, you know, to help people just digest the experience. We go through these experiences and we don't digest them.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point for the whole process and journey to begin with.
Yeah. And I think that just speaks to how many of us just truly are not in the present moment. And it's so, you know, even when we're doing things, we're thinking about, well, that thing, eventually I want to get there, or, well, and I don't want to repeat that again, instead of just like being here and being in the presence.
Yeah. Well, we weren't given a manual, and we were told that there are all these things out there because we have a consumer society. So we've been told that you need this, you need that, and you got to hurry up and get this so you can feel that, or else you won't get, you know. And so everybody's on this chase of, okay, what do I have to get to? What do I have to, you know, what do I have to do? And, you know, well, experience, but in the meanwhile, though, the sad thing is we realize it is we're creating all along. We don't even know it. We're just, you know, we can't not create.
I just thought of this in the Myers-Briggs, the MBTI, which is like a really like well-known personality test that they use it in corporate all over the place. The last letters are whether you're perceiving or judging. So you're one or the other. And it's so, and I actually flipped. When I was younger, I ended with a P, and then I got older and I ended with a J. So I wonder what I would actually be.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah. God, it's been ages since I looked at that, but yeah, that would be interesting. Especially as you continue to get back into your natural voice, you know, because you're just so intuitive naturally. It would be interesting to see if you flip that.
Well, and I think that, like, just like you were saying, I mean, you know, escaping this, or growing out of this matrix that we've sort of been in for a while, and learning like, whoa, this was all kind of backwards. I mean, even on my own hero's journey, it was like I was living by really against my intuition. Like I mean, I was really just under the influence of everyone else's ideas and external validation and all that kind of stuff. And stepping back into this backwards view of like having patience, and God, there's just so much power in patience. Like when you are a patient person, everything changes.
I mean, yeah, and it comes to you.
Yeah,
you know,
because it does.
Well, you know what's interesting too is archetype is a big a word that's used so much. You know, you have to have the archetype and look at an archetype. Well, archetype is perceive. It's a 2. So is grit. So that's what we're doing as we take the time to perceive. You know, and if you allow yourself to just, I didn't use the senses, you know, since there is a collective, I guess we do wind up in archetypes. But unfortunately, hopefully you're not doing a collective thing and you're listening to yourself. But, you know, it's just interesting to, you know, get a sense of that. Because I can't remember if it's frame or framework is also the same as perceive. Because we don't think about these things. We always are so far ahead of thinking what we have to do, rather than all we have to do is we actually are like the creator sitting here going, okay, let me see. Okay, let me perceive this. Okay, the frame. Okay, you know, I'm making a picture, you know, and just getting that all framed in, bringing the energy of life, because we know we're sitting in a sea of potential, bringing that in and making the picture.
Yeah.
And then, you know, we'll continue on of what happens there on our 9 days. But that's where we are right now, is allowing the fertilize, you know, allowing the idea to be fertilized, to germinate, to get energy, you know, to become not become an image, but have a picture.
And I didn't think of this earlier, but this is probably a good time to bring in the void. And, you know, even in that story I shared, you know, when something's planted, it's got to grow those roots underground first, in the darkness, in the void.
Right.
And I think just going back to that whole thing that I was touching on with trauma, I think it is important to face our traumas in the void and to really see them and feel them so that we can process them. Because by not processing them, we're just going to be in these endless cycles of the same shit, different day. You know?
But that is such a good point. The trauma is in the void.
Yeah.
And so we call it the darkness, the shadow, all of this. No, but it's a very rich, fertile space.
Yes.
But we can't even get to that because we're stuck over on one side in the trauma.
Yeah. And when you think about it, the most fertile soil is the stuff that has the most decay in it, the most breakdown, organic material. I mean, it is so rich to go into your trauma, but so many people are afraid of it.
And so therein lies the importance of realizing, who am I, right? And seeing, wow, I'm the attention. I'm not the trauma.
Yes.
I can look at the trauma. So therefore, I'm not the trauma. And what I feel, if the pain is the resistance.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but when you can put your attention on it, it's, it doesn't feel comfortable, but that's because the mind's in there going, what's that? Whoa, look at feel. Ooh, don't you feel like tightness? Ooh, the mind's interpreting. But if you can just keep your attention on it, what you notice is that energy starts moving. It starts breaking up, and that trauma is information and energy. And as the energy starts moving, the information gets free. And then that trauma can make some sense. Because a lot of time, trauma is like your opportunity.
Yes.
It's holding the opportunity.
And it's your trauma. It's so specific and unique to you. And a lot of time, I mean, even myself, you can get caught in these stories of, well, why did it happen? And why me? And how do I make sense of this? And I mean, really just processing it, that's the most important part.
And that's so cool what you just said, because as you do that, you're making the trauma an idea. And so you build a whole story and actually perpetuate the trauma by creating a story and making it into another creation. So the trauma takes on another form.
I love that. I love what you're saying, because I even think of, all that decaying material in the soil. It wants to be reborn into a plant. It wants to be something else. It doesn't want to transform forever, And trauma, it's just something, it really is. It's in the past. It's something that is dead, essentially. So how can we use it to fertilize new ideas and this growth?
Right. Oh, yeah. And that's when you see it as the opportunity, because what that trauma does, too, it's opening up space.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It, never mind, keep going, because I was going to say.
No, I'm good.
I was going to say, I keep going back to that story. I don't know why it was so fascinating to watch that bean grow in the soil, but I mean, it's crazy how, like, it just moving through the soil, you can see the resistance, and it just keeps going. It keeps going. And there is something just so beautiful. They always say nature's the best teacher. And I love watching stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And if we could just even appreciate that with ourselves, all of these opportunities for expansion. And that's the whole point to begin with, to expand. Even as this craziness we're living through that's unprecedented, it feels to me like the earth is on its hero's journey and it's expanding. We're sitting there going, whoa, what are you doing? What's going on here?
And I think a lot of us, we want to say my trauma was worse than your trauma, and your trauma is not as good as my trauma, instead of just recognizing trauma as an opportunity, as the thing it is. So there are so many different traumas being revealed right now. And it's, everybody, and I think, just going back to the whole orchestra, it's every individual musician playing their best, taking, and that's really what I think the point of all this is. It's not that we all have one idea and we all live this one way. It's that we really respect these natural processes and let everybody develop the way they're meant to express themselves.
Yes. And therein lies when you really can be with the voice, your voice, then you can let other people do that too. And that is love.
Yeah. So yes. Yep. It really is.
Rather than the polarizing that we're doing right now and seeing the two opposite sides, that path in the middle is, we all have a voice, and just, just allowing our growth, allowing our expansion, allowing the experience.
Well, and that was something, in this whole perceiving, the voice, and we always, like, for me, it was like, what's the voice trying to tell me? What's it saying? Instead of like, it's so like counterintuitive to just be with something But then, leaving the old matrix, it's actually the most intuitive thing you can do.
Right, right. I mean, that's the one thing. I mean, I've kind of felt it before, but I didn't put it into words. It's just amazing as you look and see how many things we have been taught or we've been led to believe that is actually the reverse of what is really true.
Do you know Weird Al Yankovic, the singer? Oh, well, he has this whole song. It's called Everything You Know Is Wrong.
Oh,
and
wow.
It's the whole thing. It's just, black is white, up is down, and short is long, all this, whatever. He's a very silly person to bring up.
No, but it's kind of fun. I mean, to even start looking at something, and when it doesn't feel right, go, well, what if I flip this?
Yeah.
I mean, just like that story of fertilizing the egg that science is finding. I mean, that is amazing.
Yeah, it is. I would encourage everyone to look up the flash and zinc because it's just I think even just giving the egg its moment in the sun to, it's not just like getting attacked all the time.
But here in that whole thing where we have that patriarchal society where it's the sperm that gets the choice to go out there. Yeah. And, and you and the females just to sit there and just attract, put on your sex appeal so you can attract that sperm. Well, no.
Yeah. It's like the females, like, I have a purpose. I'm doing something here, like, and I want the right sperm, not.
Right. Right.
Oof, it's been a half an hour already.
Yeah, yeah, I know. Actually, 35 minutes. So anyway, okay. Well, so tomorrow we've got let's see, we have our idea. It's been perceived. We've got a picture, and we're going to talk about the birth.
Oh, man, well.
Or the fear. We're going to have the birth or the fear, and I think it's going to help people see what fear really is.
Yes, yes, yes.
And or the birth, the focal point. Appreciate how important this time is, and it's I don't know what utero is, but this development time of an idea. We I'm just as guilty. Disrespect this time.
Yeah.
This first time, this first trinity is so important for our journey.
Well, and it is, and it's so funny. Yeah, this is the departure in the hero's journey, but it's funny too that the first time we went into lockdown with this whole pandemic, I was really out of sorts, and I was pretty angry about like things that were going on. And the second time, I actually had this feeling of appreciation that I was like, oh, cool, we get another time out, and like, and I know it's not, I'm not being short-sighted on like everything going on,
right.
But I guess. And I've even noticed it with other people, they've been more receptive to like this slowdown and another, I think we're slowly learning and waking up to this, like, patience is a virtue. And
right. Yeah. But also realizing the opportunity of this time. Because I've heard about this for years, like even in my 20s, Casey was saying, when we get to the year 2000, there'll be color healing and all these things of how the world was going to be different. Here I'm at 65, 40 years later, I'm going, whoa, this is really happening. I mean, what are the chances for the world to be on pause?
I know.
Not just Buffalo, New York.
Yeah. And it's cool. I mean, I think just like with opportunity, and yes, there's terrible things happening, but what a cool time to be alive.
Yes. And I just encourage everybody the energies are so supportive to really, really taking back your energy, if we can put it in that way, symbolically. It's almost like taking back your energy, noticing your voice, uniting with yourself, and being, there's a lot of people talking about sovereign, but, sovereign can get to the aggressive where it's a personal sovereign, where it's truly, becoming self-governed, but I'm getting ahead of myself. That happens down there, but you have to start here with the idea. Even the idea of who am I? Take that on as an idea. Who am I? And start
and even just I said the last time, like, even discovering who I was a process of recognizing and facing that trauma of who I'm not.
Right. Right. I mean, that's so funny too. That's like a double trauma. You have the trauma, then you have the trauma of who I'm not.
But so much opportunity.
Right. I mean, being who we're not is a trauma while we're in the trauma of the trauma. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right.
All right. Well, fabulous. Thanks so much. This was fun as always. I really enjoy talking with you and, just sharing these concepts.
tomorrow
Oh.
for day 3.
Day 3. All right. The
All right.
birth.
Take
Right.
care. See
Okay,
you
bye-bye.
tomorrow. All right, bye-bye.